Welcome to the solutions video as part of our solar system structure lesson. These are the solutions for the sort of what am I little riddles based guessing game. Granted, I'm not one for writing riddles, but you were given a series of hints about different objects found within Sol for you to try and decipher what they were, and we're now going to go through the answers. So the first one orbits things, okay? It's made of rock. And we have made things with the same name. So if we run down the components of Sol, we have the sun, planets, moons, dwarf planets, asteroids, and comets. They were the main components that we talked about earlier on. So let's try and eliminate each of these. So it orbits things. What orbits something? Okay, a planet does, a moon does, dwarf planets do, asteroids do, comets not so much. So we probably aren't talking about a sun, and we probably aren't talking about a comet. Okay, it's made of rock. Does that help us in any way? Not really. So planets sometimes are made of gas, so it may not be a planet, because I haven't said sometimes made of rock. We have made things with the same name, was your big hint. So this requires thinking back to your note, and we said that moons have another name. Do you remember what we called them? We called them satellites. So we've made obviously our metallic satellites that exist in orbit nowadays, but the actual origin of the name satellite comes from moons. So that was probably the trickiest one of the three. The answer to question one was the moons, because they are also known as satellites. It's a little bit tricky, that one. Now the second one hopefully will be a little bit easier. So this is an object that doesn't orbit, and it has a tail left behind. So because it doesn't orbit, we know planets, moons, dwarf planets and asteroids are immediately out of the game. And the tail that we see, you might remember I did my drawing earlier on, we're obviously talking about a comet, or comets. Because if you remember, a comet would look, this pen lid is very stiff. So your lump of rock is your comet. And then you've got the fact that it's often got a little tail out the back behind it, wherever it's going. And it looks something like that as it moves across the sky. Okay, final one then. Comes from a cluttered neighborhood and sometimes hangs out with asteroids. So this is coming back to the idea of clearing the neighborhood due to gravitational fields. So we know the sun's not particularly cluttered, and we know that planets have the ability to clear the neighborhood. They're able to get all of that debris and junk out of their orbital path. Obviously, they can be orbited by various junk like moons, other satellites, but they clear their own orbital neighborhood, so it can't be a planet. We say it hangs out with asteroids, so it isn't going to be an asteroid. So that leaves us with three. We also can sort of intuit that because it sticks around in a place and rather than moving through, it's not a comet. So we're left with moons and dwarf planets. But since we've already talked about moons once, and we haven't really talked about them here in terms of size, I think by process of elimination, we could eliminate moons, though I would understand if that's what you wrote, because some planets in particular have a lot of moons around them, so it could end up being quite cluttered. You look at Earth, it's only got the one, so the neighborhood is only really messy because we stuck a bunch of satellites there. So the answer, by definition of clearing the neighborhood, is the dwarf planets. And the reason I mentioned about asteroids is partly to eliminate them from the answer, but also because you may remember I talked about Ceres, or Ceres, the dwarf planet within the Martian asteroid belt. So you do find dwarf planets there. So those are your solutions. Moons for question one because of satellites, comets because of the tail, and dwarf planets because it isn't an asteroid, but it can't clear the neighborhood. So there are your answers. Make sure you've got your justifications and all of that written down when you're ready. And once you're sorted and all your solutions are in place, click the top link in the description to return to the main lesson video for our chat about the sun.